Hey everyone, welcome to Inventing Construction. I'm Ross Griffin, and today's topic is BIM. What is the bloody point? And we're going to talk about how things have developed, or have they developed at all in BIM over the last 10 or 15 years. And how do we keep fighting the good fight? I have Ralph Montague on today. And what is or will be the defining moment in relation to BIM adaptation? And where do we see BIM going in the future? One of the key points today is adapt or die. Like many of the companies we have seen over the last 20 years, Kodak, for example, or Blockbuster in the US, because they didn't adapt, they no longer exist. If you ask any of the young people out there, they won't know who you're talking about. So adapt or die. And today we have Ralph Montague. Welcome, Ralph. I'm looking forward to discussing this topic with you, BIM. What the bloody hell is the point? Perhaps you can introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Past, present, and, well, perhaps the future.
Well, I'm an architect, so we're probably making history here. Quantity surveyor talking
sitting down. Ooh.
With an architect. Been an architect for 30 years. Graduated in South Africa, so moved to Ireland 23 years ago. Ooh. 15 years ago, we set up a specialist practice to help people with BIM.
Yeah.
So we were using BIM ourselves in architectural practice, and we saw it as a better way of working. And we realized this is where the evolution of information production was going, and that people would need help. So we work with clients and architects and engineers and contractors to bring them together to use these ways of working.
Yeah. Thanks for that. And we've come across each other on LinkedIn a number of years ago, talking about BIM and the values and so on of it. But like, I don't know, you've been at this now quite a while, trying to push the BIM as a process, and really kind of what's the point of it all? Can't we just continue doing what we're doing in the traditional methods and forget about all this new process and all this technology that's coming at us?
Well, you can't forget about it. So I suppose it's just an evolution of communication technology. So it's not as if it's a nice to have or it's something completely different either. So, I mean, in the history of construction, the only way anything gets constructed is through communication of information. So even the pyramids were constructed by people communicating with each other.
Wait a minute, I thought that was the aliens. But anyway, we'll get into that in another one.
So communication of information is the only way that people can collaborate. And the technologies of communication have evolved over time, from stone tablets to quills and ink and pencils and paper and computers, CAD. So this is just an evolution in the way we produce and communicate information. But the important thing is the communication part. I mean, like you and I are talking now, we're communicating, and actually communication doesn't happen unless you understand. If you're not receiving what I'm saying, then communication hasn't happened. I'm just broadcasting, making noise, which my wife accuses me of very often. But
Hi, Audrey.
So I think we've got to put BIM in the context of that. We have to share information with each other to describe a building or a piece of infrastructure. That's probably the first thing about BIM. Is it's not just about vertical buildings, it's about the built environment. And the information part is what we're communicating. And the modeling part is probably the part that most people find difficult to understand. But modeling is actually a word from information technology rather than
construction,
because we've been modeling information forever. As a quantity surveyor, when you produce a bill of quantities, you're modeling a cost information.
So really, BIM in its context is a human evolution, not a construction evolution. If we forget about construction and look at our daily natural lives, we're evolving in terms of our communication and technology in our daily lives, whatever we're doing.
That's exactly what it is. It's just a way of communicating between us. I mean, if you and I are going to collaborate on a project, I've got to communicate my ideas to you so that you can put some costs around it or measure it or whatever. And the better that communication is, the better that collaboration is going to go. So if you don't understand what I'm saying, what I'm describing, then there's going to be miscommunication, misunderstanding, and the whole thing is going to fall down. So, throughout history, we're looking at the way we communicate with each other. It's really funny because some people say, well, we don't do 3D. Well, the built environment's always been 3D. I mean,
it exists in 3D.
In the past, we've communicated that through a series of two-dimensional abstractions. But we were still communicating a 3D artifact.
Even result.
Even if it's a flat construction like a road, like there's pipes below the road. Layers. There's 3 dimensions. There's always 3 dimensions. Involved. You're just communicating those 3 dimensions in different ways. So the most efficient way, obviously, is just to communicate 3 dimensions in 3 dimensions. The less efficient way is to communicate 3 dimensions in 2 dimensions. Or even one dimension.
And then back to 3 dimensions.
And then, of course, there's always an element of time to anything, like when should something happen. So, I mean, that's the 4th dimension. So so that in that sense, BIM isn't new at all. Like we've always been communicating those dimensions and processes. But one of the worst things about BIM is the acronym, because it's, for those who understand BIM, it's useful. Like it's just, instead of saying building information modeling every time, we just use the acronym and we both understand. But if you don't understand BIM, then it's meaningless. It's like, I mean, imagine somebody going to a meeting and hearing BIM and not knowing what it is. So they might come back to their office and say to the secretary, would you look up what this BIM thing is? And should type BIM into Google. And the first thing that will come up is BIM.ie, which is Board Ishkamara. And that means the Fisheries Board of Ireland. So the report back would go, well, they're talking about fishing.
What has that got to do with my building?
Exactly. So, like that. And what's happening there is a miscommunication. So there's a misunderstanding of communication. So, I mean, another example might be you and I, we might talk about specs because, I'm an architect, I'm trying to communicate something to you, to measure, to cost, so you have an understanding of specs as specification documents. And we think, but I might say, well, Ross, I've got my specs in my pocket. And you say, oh, stupid architects carrying this
paper with
500 pages of useless information around with them. But it's, we might be talking about specs. So, communication breaks down when the acronym being used is misunderstood. So, and that's the problem with BIM. It's a useful acronym for those who understand it, but it's not a useful acronym for those who don't understand it.
So it's a great introduction. Thank you very much, Ralph. But
what's the point? You
say? What's the point? But have things really developed? We've 2 aspects to this. Of course, we have our local market here in Ireland, and then we have the international market. And from the adaptation of BIM over the last 15 years, as you mentioned, when you originally set up your organization, have we really moved on?
Absolutely. So, I mean, life has moved on in you're carrying a phone with you. Like 15 years ago, you would have tried to find a coin and go to a coin phone. It's not actually a phone you're carrying around with you. It's a computer. You might use it as a phone. So technology has moved on. It's fair to say that in the construction industry, compared to other industries, the adoption of technology has been slower, and that's been measured by companies like McKinsey. And so it's one of the worst sectors in terms of, it's not the worst, so the worst would be fishing. Board Ishkamara. But it has been slow, and there's probably a lot of reasons for that because of the fragmented nature of the sector, and this kind of misunderstanding of technology. It's funny that people in the industry will use technologies like smartphones and things for other aspects of their lives. But when it comes to work, it's back to the old piece of paper. So it's a very primitive form of communication, the piece of paper. I mean, it's better than just talking because
no, indeed. And it's a bit contradictory, really, isn't it? Like that in your private life, you expect when you go home to turn on the TV that Netflix is there and you can select any movie now. Your phone, you have accessibility to absolutely all and every bit of information. But when it comes to the construction site, No. Here's my paper. Here's my specs document, my 500-page document. I'll email that PDF to you. Or here are the 1,500 drawings that you need to build my 3-dimensional building.
Yeah.
Like, that's just crazy.
It is crazy. And it's because people aren't thinking about communication.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, I'll even say as an architect, when you're doing your work as an architect, you're not really thinking about how the product of your work is going to be received.
No.
So in the communication, you've got it into a mode of, this is what we do. We produce plans, we produce elevations, we produce sections, we produce details, we produce schedules, we produce specifications. That's my job.
Yeah. But the output is this, and I need to get as far as that, so I've completed my agreement.
So I can get paid. And whether you understand what I've produced is almost irrelevant. And the other thing about like traditional communication is it's very abstract. So if I'm describing a building to you in 2-dimensional drawings, you're only getting part of the picture, because if I draw a section through the building in one place, that doesn't describe the building. That only describes the building in one place.
Exactly.
And so there's a lot of misunderstanding and miscommunication, and the result of all that misunderstanding and miscommunication is this back and forth, RFIs and delays and variations, and the result of all that is that building is slow, it's expensive,
and confrontational.
And it's not producing quick enough. Now, 10 years ago, that was probably fine. We could get away with that. But what's happening in the world now is the demand for infrastructure is increasing so rapidly. Like, even in my own lifetime, I know I'm old, but the world population has doubled. So we need more houses, more schools, more hospitals, more roads, more communication infrastructures, more energy production facilities than we've ever needed. And our industry, because it's so inefficient and slow, cannot deliver. And even in our own country, in Ireland, we would consider ourselves a first world country. Like, we don't have enough housing, we don't have enough schools, we don't have enough. So we think we're smart, but we're not. Like, we're not able. Our industry is not able to deliver on the needs, and so we have to rethink the way we do things. It's not a complete revolution.
No.
I mean, we still have to communicate. That's the ultimate thing.
It's an evolution rather than a revolution.
We have to take the technologies that are available to us. They're not, BIM is not new. It's been around. Like, we were doing this 15 years ago. So it's not, in fact, BIM actually started in the 1970s. So it's not a new idea.
No, not at all.
It's a well-matured, well-developed idea. What's slow is the adoption of the idea. So people are persistently pursuing this sort of primitive form of communication, which is paper documents and 2-dimensional abstract views.
And it's disconnected, that 2D element of it. It's disconnected, and slow is probably another way of looking at it.
Well, a lot of people think it's faster. Like, they say, well, I can draw a plan and an elevation and section a lot quicker than I can create a 3-dimensional model. But you've only created a section in one instance. If you had to create enough sections to fully describe the building and enough elevations and enough plans, well, then it would be much faster just to do it once. Well, why do it 7 times? It's just, and also the production of schedules, like
door schedules,
doing that as a separate thing from so you put a door in a drawing, but then you have to put it again. You put it in a schedule again, and then you have to put it in the specification again.
And a bit of quantities.
So you're describing the same door 6 or 7 times. So
totally inefficient.
That's not an efficient way of working. We have the technology to describe the door once in BIM and put in that object everything you need to know about the door: who made it, what it costs, what the carbon count is, so it's a smart object. And you just put that object in your project once,
and you've access to it.
And that's closer to real life, by the way, because there is only one door that you're putting into the real project. So it's a super efficient way. It's not slightly better. It's like super efficient. I mean, like the communication we're doing here. This is a good analogy, actually. Like, we're communicating. I have some thoughts, and I'm creating sound waves through vocal cords, and they're going over to you, and little bones are rattling in your head.
Lots of bones rattling in my head.
But that communication is happening. But now you have this device here, which is picking up the sound waves and recording it. So this conversation, which is between you and I, will suddenly be broadcast through social media and other things to thousands of people. So, and they don't even have to be present in the moment. They could listen to it at leisure.
It's a multiple output of a single activity.
Yeah, and that's the way to understand BIM. You create the information once, and you can get so many use cases out of it, whereas the traditional way is...
Yeah, and one of the things for me on BIM is the idea that BIM is a technology. I hear this, and we talk about it an awful lot, and I know you do as well, that BIM is a technology. And BIM is not a technology, it's a process, in our opinion. You add technologies to the process to improve that delivery model,
That depends on your definition of a technology, because most people think a technology is a software, but it's not. It's a technology is a combination of software. I mean, your smartphone isn't one thing.
Yeah.
The only reason your phone works is because of a whole process of communication technologies, infrastructure, apps. So it's like you look at it and think, well, it's one thing, but it's not actually one thing. Like if it wouldn't exist, or it wouldn't function without electricity.
Similar to your building. At the end of the day, similar to your building, it's made up of components.
So you can't separate process and technology. Technology includes process, always does, always has. Technology also includes people, by the way. So, without people using and
or inventing, for that matter.
Yeah, there is no technology. So people, process, and software coming together.
The combination. So, like again, you mentioned you've been at this quite a while. How do you keep fighting the good fight towards pushing BIM as a way of working and a lifestyle within the construction industry?
I suppose as an architect, I suppose I'm interested in creating the built environment. Like that's. I suppose that's what we're about.
Yeah.
And we want to do that in the best way possible. That's available. So, I mean, that's my passion. I often say to people, I have a kind of love-hate relationship with our industry, because on the one hand, it's fascinating what our industry does.
Yeah.
Like we create the infrastructure that every single person in the world lives by. Like there's not a single person that's not touched by the built environment. It's where you live. It's where your kids go to school. It's where we care for people in healthcare. It's where you shop. It's where you play. It's where everything. Like you can't actually imagine a thing in your life that doesn't involve the built environment. And we're in the industry that creates it. So that is awesome and fascinating. On the other hand, the way in which we do it is shocking. It's terrible. Like there's parts of the way this industry operates that really bug me. There's a complete disrespect for people. Firstly, like people are basically trying to screw each other. The communications are so bad.
It's interpretation as opposed to communication.
Well, I was actually, over Christmas, I was reading a book, and part of the book was about the story of the Scottish Parliament building. And that project started at a £40 million budget. Okay. And it went through a whole series of events where the Parliament eventually sort of imposed a cap on the costs of about 2 million. But the project ended at 400 million pounds. Okay, so a 10 times increase in cost. And most people read it and say, that's astounding. I was reading it and thinking, that's actually normal. Like that's the way happens. Our industry operates. There's such bad communication and processes and planning, and that happens all the time. And every
capital project,
every piece of infrastructure we create is over time, over budget. People are going out of business, being put out of business. It's just the operating environment is shocking, And so what keeps me going is if I can do anything, whatever little thing that is, to change that dynamic. And the little thing I think I can do is tell people about this better way of communication. And there's nothing fancy. I mean, it's technology that's matured, been available for years. It's just getting people to understand that. And one of the best things we can do actually is just sort of either get rid of the acronym or, explain to people what the acronym means, so that when you and I both say BIM, at least we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm not talking about one thing and you're sort of thinking about fish or,
indeed.
If we can communicate better, we can collaborate better, we can improve the way we work, we can improve the output of our industry, we can meet the human demand for infrastructure.
And for all our young listeners out there, don't get dismayed by the construction industry. It's a great place to work, and it's exciting and it's fascinating. Exactly. Yeah. And the opportunity there for learning and growth is exponential.
Well, there's nothing more real as a career than creating the built environment. I mean, you can get a career creating computer games or whatever. That's fun, but it's like that only impacts a few people, like who are into computer games. Yeah. When you get into this industry, you're literally impacting everybody's life. You're creating the environment, and if you can do that in a better way, and bring your expertise to this industry, which needs some young expertise.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's one of the oldest industries alive. We've been building forever. You know?
Yeah. Well, probably closer to another one, but operating in the same way.
Same way, yeah, right? Yeah. Back to the fish again. What is or what will be the defining moment for you in relation to BIM adaptation? At what point will you see, now we're on it? Or has all that already happened?
For me, that's happened. It's always happened. Like from the day I graduated as an architect, I've been in the business of creating information and communicating information. So for me, I've always been involved in it. When I was a young architect, we were using pencils and pens and paper and ammonia printers. Yeah. And, we evolved to CAD, and we've evolved to other technologies. So it's an ongoing evolution. Is not something that happens. Yeah. It
as long as there's progress, I guess
it never stops. I don't think the adoption of technology will ever stop. Yeah. And we've seen that in every aspect of our lives. Like you don't travel the way you used to travel. Like the way you book your flights, the way you book your hotels, the way you call a taxi. Like everything is different, but it's still the same. You're still doing the same thing. You're just doing it in a much more efficient way. You don't do shopping the way you used to. Like you used to go and spend hours wandering around a shopping center. Now you're online and the stuff arrives at your door. And if you have a daughter like me, then there's an Amazon van 3 times a day outside the door. So everything's changing, but it's also not changing. Like it's only getting better. It's getting more efficient. And you mentioned Netflix, and like you don't consume media in the same way you did. Like you used to have a TV guide and to make sure that
what was happening at
this time I have to be sitting down and watching.
If you're lucky enough, you could record it with your VHS, but that's the next level.
Yeah. So every aspect of our lives is being affected by technologies, and it won't be any different. Like we might be slower, but it won't be any different in this industry. And of course, when those things happen, there's winners and losers. Like it was actually interesting when we started our business 15 years ago. Budget travel had just gone into liquidation. So before that, if you wanted to travel somewhere, you had to go on a Saturday morning and queue outside a shop and talk to a travel agent at Budget Travel.
Sun holiday in Mediterranean.
Or that you didn't really want, but they just sold you. And but Budget Travel had just gone out of business. So because people had discovered online travel. And so there's losers. There's people who are sticking, doggedly to the way they used to work, and this is the way we've always done it. And
Blockbuster comes to mind for me with Netflix.
Kodak, like there's so many examples of losers, and that's just a reality. So unfortunately, there's many people listening who will be out of business because they refuse to adopt with the evolution. And even Darwin, I think, said something along the lines of, it's not the strongest of the species that exists, that survives, but the one that's most adaptable to change. So, so if you're not moving with the evolution, then you're being left behind. And that's been happening. So we've seen in Ireland, we've seen some incredible companies that are just ahead of the game, doing fantastic work, yourselves included.
Thanks.
Yeah, like, I mean, there's not many quantity surveyors in the world that are on board with these technologies, and just fascinating. I mean, you can measure a project in seconds compared to what people are doing with the old school scale
I've one example of that, and it's not actually just a measurement of the project. I always use foundations in my explanation to why we should be adapting to a more data-driven process in quantity surveying. In conceptual design stage, an engineer will give me a drawing, or an architect will give me a drawing. There'll be a foundation on it, perhaps. I'll measure that foundation. I get a quantity, I price it. Lovely. Next design gateway, I get a new set of quote-unquote drawings. Same foundation is there, but maybe it has changed slightly, or the numbers have altered because the design has changed. I need to remeasure that foundation. So I remeasure that foundation. The next design gateway comes along, and I need to do my update of my cost plan and cost estimate. Now, for my good QS, I'll remeasure everything so that we have an accurate cost estimate, but I'm remeasuring that same foundation. And that's my third time doing it. I haven't created a bill of quantities yet. We haven't got into change management and execution yet. Bill of quantities, I'll remeasure that foundation. Execution, when change management happens and there's a claim, I'll remeasure that foundation. The reiteration of measurement over and over and over again, because of the 2D process we live in, is such a waste of time. When you can look at the alternative approach, which is a 3D model, the engineer models the foundation, you link that information within your costing system to your priceable item. Next time the model is updated, if nothing has changed within the information and string of information, my quantity is updated automatically. I'm not remeasuring. I'm validating information and quality.
Yeah.
And so what is that doing for the project? It means I'm taking all those hours that I spend remeasuring the same foundation and I'm putting into quality assurance. That's a better product for the client,
absolutely,
for the architect, for the engineer, for the quantity surveyor, for the contractor. It's a better product because it's validated.
Yeah.
Rather than
I'll take it one step further for you, because you're just thinking about yourself there.
Yeah.
When the project goes out to tender, you have 7 or 8 other quantity surveyors remeasuring to put in the bid. Yeah. And then once the contractor is appointed, there'll be a quantity surveyor on the other side who's doing exactly what you're doing multiple times. Yeah. And every subcontractor that is appointed has a quantity surveyor that's measuring their work over and over again. Exactly. And so the remeasure, like if somebody had to spend some time quantifying the remeasure of that happens in the process, it would be a ridiculous amount of time. And the thing is, that amount of time is built into the system.
Currently,
the client might think, well, I'm not paying for the 7 people that don't get the job. You are paying for it because it's built into the system. Like you'll pay for it on the next project, or the next client will pay for it. Yeah, it's all built into the slow, inefficient way we work.
And so we say this openly on the podcast and videos, is that actually I don't quantify the foundation. The engineer does, because the engineer designs the geometry that gives me the quantity. So I'm not quantifying anything anymore, in a general sense. Of course, there's elements that need to be quantified in 2D, et cetera, but it's the engineer that does my quantification for me by producing the foundation in a geometric form within their 3D modeling software. Yeah. And so suddenly you're getting the efficiencies, as you mentioned. All the multitude of other stakeholders can now use that geometric information as well, not just the geometric, but also the added data that they've put in there, the concrete type, the reinforcement of that element over and over and over again, quickly and efficiently, rather than having to sit down, read the spec, understand what the concrete type is, understand the reinforcement, and again, the inefficiencies in it. So imagine what would happen if that workflow worked not only selfishly for me as a quantity surveyor, but then for the entire industry. The efficiencies you'd create, not only in the design period, but the design, the procurement, and the execution, because I'm validating information. It's quality. I understand it. You're not going to have change management in that foundation and execution, because we're all working off the same principal information that the engineer produced, that foundation, that digital information. So the efficiencies we can create with that single point of information, that foundation created by an engineer who doesn't care about the quantum output in particular, he or she cares about the creation of that foundation and how it fits within the building design and development. So imagine what we can do then. We would be able to cut weeks and potentially months off the project lifecycle program or schedule, because the quantity surveyor now wouldn't need weeks, months to create the cost plans, months to create the bills of quantities. The contractors would be able to reduce their tender time because of the efficiencies of information. It's been qualified, they can trust it, they can, if contractually the modeled information is a contractual element. Yeah. So like, it's unbelievable really what could happen.
And the advantage, like for me as an architect, one of the things I hated was the process of value engineering, because you know, in the traditional way, as an architect, you work away for 3 months, 6 months, you're producing a design, and there's no validation of the cost as you're going along. Yeah. So you put all this effort in and you create this beautiful product, and everybody's happy with it. Yeah. And then you give it to the quantity surveyor, and I'm not, no
disrespect.
And they go off into a dark room for 4 weeks, and then they come back and say, sorry, it's too expensive. Yeah. And you have to cut this out and cut that out. And what is the first thing that goes when you do value engineering?
Yeah, it finishes and architectural stuff.
Yeah,
it's
all the quality. Yeah, because all the complicated stuff like the foundations,
and the structure,
those are just, they're there, like you need them. You can't get rid of the foundation. So all the stuff that the client has been sold on, you know, in terms of the vision of the building and how it's going to look and how people are going to experience it and everything is stripped out. That's not value engineering.
Yeah, that's quality reduction, right?
Yeah, that is quality reduction. Yeah, and it's a different thing to value engineering. Value engineering means you engineer the value. Yeah. You know, so that there was this iterative process between designers and quantity surveyors during design that continually validating the decisions on a cost point of view, so that there's no surprise at the end of design. And when you go to tender, the expectation of the tender price is
it's already set,
reasonable. Yeah. And there's no big surprises. And if you think about the amount of time that goes into value engineering, like you go out to tender, everybody knows this project's going to be over budget. You're like, there's no surprise. It's not as if we don't understand the costs, but we'll say, oh, we'll just put it out there and see what happens. Yeah. The prices come back high. Yeah. You take the lowest tenderer and then you say, sorry, we have to reduce this from 80 million to 40 million. Yeah. What can you do?
You're almost betting at that moment on one of the contractors making a huge mistake within their tender price, so that you're getting a low price and going, we've got someone now that will build it for our budget. And the reality is that the base cost of any construction is the base cost. Yeah. It doesn't matter if it's contractor A or B.
That is disrespectful to contractors. Yeah, because not only in attitude, but contractors know what they're doing. Yeah. They are smart people. They understand the business. Yeah. And basically what they understand is they'll bring the project back to the original value through variations and change. And it's a game, basically.
And that just creates conflict at the end of the day.
Yeah, but so it's not the tender price. Like everybody gets hung up on the tender price. It's the final amount. It's not the 40 million that the Scottish Parliament building was.
It's the 400.
It's the 400 million. That's, and I don't think the 400 million is actually realistic. It's probably somewhere in between. But because of this
inefficiencies create cost money because of time, et cetera.
And it all gets added up. And we've got our own example in Ireland with many projects.
Yeah. And I know, and that's just to take it back slightly to a comment that you made about value engineering, and stakeholder groups like the architect, the engineer, and the quantity surveyor are working together for the client for project efficiency. That means getting a quality level that the client needs for a cost that they can afford. And one of our selling points in Cosmos is integrated, collaborative approach to cost management, value-driven cost management, integrated and collaborative. It has to be in that way. No wonder we have this stigma in the industry where the architect hates the QS and the quantity surveyor hates the contractor and the engineer, hates everybody else. No offense to anybody out there, of course.
But well, it's only because you've done all this work. Yeah. And then you expect it to change it. And by the way, you don't get an additional fee to do the value engineering. Like it's considered part of the design development. So you've done all this work and the costs haven't been validated all along. And then you're told basically go and redesign the building for no extra fee because it didn't turn out the way. So that's what you can see, where that misunderstanding creates these tensions between all the players.
So BIM in that way could improve and increase the efficiencies of decision making in the moment as we're designing and developing. Like we always say to our clients and the engineering and architect partners that we have, is that the structure is irrelevant. It only is there to keep up the building, right? So let's be as efficient as possible within the structure. If we over-design the foundations, we're losing money because the project will be affected elsewhere. No one sees the foundations. So you need the most efficient foundation possible in your project to be cost effective. And then that cost efficiency can be then invested into the indoor climate, the qualities within the building, all the architectural elements. That needs to be done up front though. You can't wait until the end of a design phase or when you're doing your value engineering to go, perhaps we need to rethink the structure of the building, because if we rethink that, everything changes in the building. And so no one touches the structure. So it's an interesting kind of combination here. We have total inefficiencies in a traditional model that create inefficiencies that give inefficiencies at the end. Whereas we can go, actually, there's a different way of doing this.
Yeah, it's not that different, but it's far more efficient. And it's not trying to make the point to people. It's not slightly more efficient. It's not like you get a 1% gain in efficiency. When we're communicating between each other through models rather than, if I give you 6,000 drawings, like it takes you weeks to try and process that.
I can't. It's not possible.
Yeah, so you pick a few and you sort of make some judgments, but if I give you a model, well, you can extract whatever information from it in days. So like you've taken something that would normally take many weeks and brought it down to days. I mean, in the traditional sense, if you said to a quantity surveyor, I want you to do a measure of the design every 2 weeks,
every fortnight,
they would tell you, no ways, I'm not doing that.
But it wouldn't be possible because you'd have the measure finished when you'd be starting measuring again.
It's possible, but it'll cost a lot of money. It'll cost a lot of money, and people say, I'll wait until you got the design finished and then I'll do it. But then you have this problem with it's too late. But BIM allows you to do a measure every validation, as you said, every 2 weeks. So as part of the quantity surveyors are becoming part of the design team. Exactly. Like the architects and engineers come together every 2 weeks and discuss how's the design developing. Suddenly costs can become part of that conversation. It never was.
And carbon. Now, if we talk about LCA and carbon, now we have cost and carbon as a singular output of our service as quantity surveyors.
So the whole process is vastly improved, not slightly improved. And the communication, I mean, that's going back to the first point, like the communication is vastly improved. The misunderstanding, the client knows exactly what they're getting. I mean, if I give a client 3,000 PDFs, as drawings, well, firstly, like reading a drawing is a skill like you have to learn.
It's
like
trained. It's a trained skill.
Yeah. So most clients would look at it and they'll just see white space with black lines. It doesn't actually mean anything. They haven't had the training to read two-dimensional drawings, but nobody needs training to read 3 dimensions because that's the world we live in. Like that's how we experience the world. From the day you grew up, that's how you experience the world. So you put the client in the 3-dimensional virtual building and you say, that's what you're getting. And there's an immediate understanding in minutes rather than like days of what they're going to getting. And they can say, yes, I like that. No, I don't like that. The biggest problem in construction at the moment is changes on site.
Well, that goes back to the validation now. Again, what we talked about in 3,000 drawings.
I mean, it's just the problem at the moment is the clients don't picture what they're getting. And then they're walking on site and they say, oh, is that what it's going to? No, I don't want that. Can we move that? Can we do this? Can we, and
so client instructed change as opposed to
the
request for information and
well, there's two parts of it. There's missing information, which that's one thing, but there's also this client instructed change, which is mostly because they didn't understand what they were being offered in the first place. But the most expensive, most disruptive, and most dangerous place to make a change is on site.
Is on site.
Like you're running daily preliminaries in the millions. You just the safety issue of people's lives.
It's crazy when you think about it, the level of risk involved.
But the problem of our industry at the moment is we push most of those decisions to site. We say, well, don't worry, we'll sort it out on site.
Yeah.
It's So we're going to site with unresolved, incomplete, uncoordinated information, and we're expecting people to build something and
on time. For the budget.
So they're having to do
quality.
the resolution, the coordination on site in the most expensive, most disruptive, most dangerous place. Yeah. And what BIM is saying is, well, why don't we pull that resolution and coordination into a software process, because there at least you're not killing people.
It's cheap. It's only hours. It's man hours, right? It's cheaper.
Oh, it's far cheaper to do it in software. Yeah. But it's also less dangerous, and you're not spending real materials. Like if you build a real wall on site and then have to knock it down, like that's real material, real labor, real cost. In software, deleting a line and adding another line or whatever is not. There is a cost.
There's a cost.
But so the message should be earlier engagement with the contracting team. This is another thing we should talk about, is that architects and engineers don't fully understand how to build stuff. And I'm admitting that as an architect. Like I've never actually built anything in my whole career. So like you rely on the expertise of the contracting team.
Absolutely.
And the problem is we only bring in that expertise at the moment
and much
after we've signed a contract. So we've signed a deal. We've given you as a contractor some incomplete, unresolved, uncoordinated information. We're saying we want to guarantee the price. And now we'll start discussing how do we
build it?
And that's too late. Like it's
everything's upside down and back to front type of thing.
We have to look at bringing the expertise of the contracting community into the design process earlier.
Absolutely.
And that's where you look at things like integrated project delivery, or
early contractor involvement, all of
alliancing, contracting, or like different forms of contracting that can sort of resolve the information.
And more collaborative, more integrated.
Get more certainty. I mean, that's what clients want at the end of the day.
They just want a product.
They want a delivery certainty. They want a cost certainty and a quality certainty.
I'm going to bring you back to a point that you mentioned, and it's something that we talk about a lot again in Cosmos, and it relates to the quantity surveying practice and the design process. In a design process, the architect and engineer design for a reason. There's an output of design information. That's what they do. That's what they do. That's what they design for. The quantity surveyor is the first stakeholder group in that client team that review that information for a purpose other than design. Their output is information. They need to extract quantities, extract qualities from specifications, restructure that in a cost perspective. And if they can't understand that information, the marketplace is not going to understand that information. So the value in the integrated approach that you mentioned, where you're validating every 2 weeks, you're sitting down, like our process is we sit down with each discipline lead that's not just the architect as a whole, but the facade architect, the interior architect, the landscaping architect separately to talk about their design, the model, the specification on a weekly basis. It's only 15 minutes, 30 minutes touchdown. We're building the relationship. So the next time something happens, Ralph's going, oh, I must tell Ross about this. As opposed to, if Ralph hasn't seen Ross in 3 months, you're not ringing me telling me there was a change because we haven't built that relationship yet. And so that integrated approach is a huge value, but it's validation.
What would help there is if quantity surveyors realized that cost is a dimension of design. So most quantity surveyors think of the separation between design and cost so they're reactive. Basically they're waiting for the design and then they're simply reacting to what's presented to them.
This is the result of what you've given them.
But they don't see that they're participating in the design process. But cost is definitely a dimension of design. So and I mean the best examples I've seen of this is target value design. So where cost is actually a parameter of design, and quantity surveyors are participating in the design process, and cost information is considered design information. Now that's a revolutionary idea. Well, it's an evolutionary idea. It means that quantity surveyors are less reactive and more participating in the process. And as an architect, that would be wonderful, because it means as we've said earlier, that you're validating the cost as you're going along. There's no surprises at the end. I'm not expected to rechange my whole design just because of a late costing exercise. And it's best for everyone. Like everybody's happy. Everybody gets their job done. Everyone knows what they're getting. And
again, like what you're saying in the traditional model is that traditional process, let's not get our terminology confused. An architect and engineer, like any other professional, spend time and effort developing an idea. They get emotionally attached and connected with that idea because they've spent their time doing it. And then we come in as quantity surveyors and say, you went down the wrong road there, I'm afraid. Let's go all the way back. Trash the idea that you came up with. Well done and all, but let's put that in the bin. That's no good, and start again.
Same thing's happening at construction. That you give a design to a construction team, and they're doing exactly what the quantity surveyors are doing. They're looking at it and saying, "You can't build that." And we have to do this, we have to do that, we have to undo everything that you've done. By the way, you're not going to get paid an additional fee for all this extra work. And so you can see why architects defend their design, not because they feel it's the best design, because they don't want to do the work again.
No, and if you're not
for no money, like you're in business at the end of the day. So that's the next point. First point is, let's get the quantity surveyors to be more interactive rather than reactive, and see themselves as part of the design process. But the next step would be to get the contractors and the subcontractors, the specialist subcontractors, into the design process. So let them also not react, because that's the way the industry is happening at the moment. The construction industry is given a design and basically saying, well, build that. And even if the contractor looks at it and says, that is the worst way to build something. But since I've signed a contract,
we're going to give it a go.
I'll just do it. That's what the architect said. Instead of allowing the contracting community to bring their expertise to the process.
We've talked about what we would like to happen, but where do you see BIM going in the future? Like, do you really see the quantity surveyors interacting in this way you described, and the contractors interacting this way that you described?
Absolutely. It's happening already. So, so BIM isn't. It's always been there. I suppose that's my point. BIM's always been there. Like, the process of producing information and communicating information has always been there. Technology has improved that, and it will continue to improve that. So technology, there isn't a day where we say, right, from today onwards, technology stops. Like, your smartphone will continue to evolve. The services that are related to it will continue. And so it will continue. People will fall out of business. Companies like yours are going to be so efficient at reacting to costs initially, but also then beginning to participate in the design and bringing useful information to the client, where eventually the client will say, well, why would I work with a traditional quantity surveyor where I have no certainty, late answers, and all these problems? Why would I want that? If you think about it from a client's point of view, why would you want to work with the industry as it is at the moment? Why?
It's the risk, it's crazy.
Why would you sign up to build a building and say, well, it's going to cost me twice as much as I expect. It's going to take twice as long as I expect. The quality is not going to be what I expect at all, but I'm just expected to suck it up, and it's not a pleasant experience. For us in the industry, it's exciting, and we make a living out of all that waste. But for the users of building and the clients of buildings, it's a horrific experience. So
I would say that the public sector is our money at the end of the day, and it's our taxes that are going into this efficiency as the largest investor. So definitely lots to happen. It's been great having you on, Ralph. Really appreciate the time, and I'm looking forward to the BIM Coordinator Summit this year as well. There's lots of good things happening there, so we'll be in contact.
The best group to be around. Those at the cutting edge of adoption and technology. So that's the place to be.
Thanks very much for listening. There's a LinkedIn link below in the show notes. We would love to connect with you.
We hope you enjoyed it and have you with us in the next one. Thank you very much.